here. I don't know when you're watching this, but here it's morning, but not too early, thankfully. So because it's morning, I am going to make scones. Scones are kind of like a biscuit type thing if you've never had them. I just take for granted that everyone knows what scones are because they're delicious. So I decided that I was gonna make scones, but like circular scones instead of the triangle shaped scones that I have made before. I am not on a scone kick per se. I just really like things that I can go munch on. So the recipe comes from Yummy Tummy Earthy, thank you. And this recipe calls for 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, a 1/4 cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Then you have 5 tablespoons cubed of cold unsalted butter. And then we have a 1/2 cup of milk, 1 egg, and then raisins if you want to. I'm not adding the raisins, never mind keeping this recipe. I'm just using this as a structure. So what I did start with was 3/4 cup of flour, but I did 1 cup of almond flour and about a 3/4 cup of buckwheat flour. The thing you have to remember, I think I've said this before though, is that with buckwheat flour, you can't do the whole amount. It's about a 7/8 to a cup ratio for buckwheat flour to regular flour. So I just cut a little bit off, maybe a teaspoon or so, not a teaspoon, a little bit more so, maybe a tablespoon so, off of the amount. So that's mixed. I would have sifted if, almond flour was easy to sift. So I used a fork to kind of sift and go through it to make sure it wasn't too clumpy, because it's gonna get clumpy afterwards with the butter. We're also going to add, it's at a 1/4 cup of sugar. I'm not doing that. That's too much sugar. However, I am gonna use sugar. I never use sugar, but because this is a scone recipe that's similar to a biscuit, honey would have been a kind of not so great idea. I don't have crystallized honey here. I didn't want to buy anything extra, so I'm gonna use this is probably about 2 teaspoons worth of stevia. And I'm going to use a bit of brown sugar. So this is a 1/4 cup. I'm not going to use the whole thing. This is already kind of crystallized because we got air in it before. If you ever want to put the moisture back into your brown sugar, you can always put it in the microwave for about a half a minute or so with a half-cut apple, and that'll give you the moisture that you want. So I used about an 1/8 cup of the brown sugar. One because I don't think I need a lot because of the stevia, and the other because I just don't want to keep breaking this up. So that I can put away. Mixy. I'm going to add the baking powder. Now, because I'm not going with my usual eggs here or butter here, although the butter doesn't matter so much here, I'm not going with my usual eggs, so I'm going to add a little bit more baking powder than the recipe called for, not too much. The recipe called for the 2 teaspoons, so I'm going to add not a whole tablespoon, but close to. There we go, about a tablespoon, a little bit taken out. And I'm adding the extra baking powder because I don't have the egg to also help it rise, as well as add the moisture in it. So I need to give myself a little bit of a boost to leaven it up. So now we're going to add in the butter, however, I'm not adding butter because although that's lots of fat and deliciousness and it's very not too bad for you, maybe not very healthy for you, but not too bad for you. And I'm actually kind of going vegan here. Well, not me per se, but I want to try a vegan recipe. So I'm going to use my trusty avocado. However, the avocado is going to change the color of the meal. If you are making something that has chocolate, you can get away with the color difference. I'm not going to be able to get rid of the color difference. However, I really just don't want to use a bunch of butter, and I still haven't taken the time to go and grab coconut oil. So this is what we're using. So it calls for about 5 tablespoons of butter. That's about a 1/3 cup. A 1/3 cup is about maybe like this size. You can look at it compared to my face. This size, a half an avocado, maybe a little bit more. So I'm going to use a little bit of this and probably a part of this. Side point, the way you want to be able to take out your avocado pit without hurting yourself is, there we go. Just put your knife in, wiggle it out, and then you can just take it out from this other side instead of cutting yourself. And like I've said before, avocados have a great amount of health benefits, lots of antioxidants, lots of good fats. So you can't go wrong with an avocado. Plus, they don't really taste like anything. So it's not like you're going to mess up the flavor. Also, the great thing about the avocado is that it is smoother in texture. It's more similar to butter, let's say, than coconut oil, unless you remelt your coconut oil, which is possible. You can do that. That should be enough. This is totally mad scientist place because I'm totally changing this recipe. So let's mix this up with the fork. You want to keep mixing it up with your fork and you want to get a crumbly texture. Okay, so we have a pretty crumbly texture. If you want to look, crumble, crumble, crumbles. It reminds me of Ovia's salt ponds when I used to live in St. Vincent. So only it's a lot lighter than that. Those salt ponds were pretty dark, had pretty dark black sand, and very uncomfortable in the middle of the day, I gotta say, unless you have water shoes. So that looks good to go. And now we're going to add the milk and the egg. So I've decided on a flax egg. Flax egg is pretty much just 1 tablespoon, or it's 1 part flax, ground flax to about 3 parts water. So I did a tablespoon to 3 tablespoons of, well, I did a heaped tablespoon to about 3 tablespoons of water. The great thing is because flax can become very gelatinous and it has like a mucinous fiber that kind of soaks up the water to make it very gelatinous. It is really great for your digestive system. It holds moisture really well that you would usually use when you use a high heat recipe like scones. And it has lots of antioxidants. So it really is a great choice. Plus it has a lot of omega-3 fatty acids. We're gonna put all of this in. And then instead of regular milk, let's see, I'm using almond milk. So now I'm gonna mix this up all together. And it specifically says to use the fork to bring it together. So now comes the forming time. This is probably the best time for you to now start your preheating your oven. This recipe is gonna be at 425, so you can preheat now while we do the rest of it. And now we're on to the rest. So you can see, or maybe you can't see, but I prepared a flat surface because there's not many flat surfaces in this kitchen that isn't covered. So I covered it with buckwheat flour, and I'm just gonna take the rest of my dough, which is very wet basically. So I'm just gonna basically put all of this on here and form it and then start cutting into it. Okay, so I figured out a way through my conundrum of everything sticking. So I added a little bit more buckwheat flour, so I guess because I added the extra moisture that it would keep in from the flax eggs, that extra buckwheat flour ended up working. But I didn't add a lot, maybe like a tablespoon worth. So I basically have now 1 3/4 cup of flour. And then I found an ice cream scoop, and I've been using the ice cream scoop, and I've been flattening it with a spatula. So, yay for finding out how to make things work. And then now I have my handy dandy, if I can even get this thing down, spatula that I have oiled, greased on the back, and I'm just gonna press down and try to shape it in the shape that I want. I made about 10. The recipe calls for 12 small scones. These are a bit larger as compared to these. So that's probably where that's coming from. But I really don't want to remake them. So we're just gonna throw these in. It's gonna be about 14 to 17 minutes. And while that's going on, we're going to make a spread. I am basically just gonna make a sweetened cream cheese. I did look up recipes for clotted cream because I wanted to go authentic, and then I realized I was not gonna do that at all. So I had lots of leftover cream cheese that I'm just gonna literally dump into this bowl and whip it good. So I'm gonna add a bit of honey. You can use whatever honey you want. I would use a liquid honey for this. I'm probably doing about a 1-to-4 ratio. No, probably 1-to-3 ratio of honey to cream cheese because there's not a lot in here. Then we're gonna add a little bit of pumpkin pie spice because I like the spiciness. So we're actually going to mix this with a hand mixer. You wanna go until it's about smooth-ish. Okay, we're good. that's it. That's literally it. So now I gotta clean this up, put it all together, and put it in a container to make it look pretty. So the scones, which kind of basically look like deflated biscuits, have finished cooling down. So why don't we check out the delicious, scrumptious look of deliciousness that is here? That's the deliciousness. Or, you know, I don't know. Looks delicious to me because I know it's going to be delicious. So I'll take a small one. Yeah, this one's good. And I'll try a piece without any of the, you know, clotted cream or really cream cheese. Let's see what it tastes like. Actually, pretty good. It's soft, kind of chewy. Has a little bit of a nutty flavor. Yeah, it's pretty good. And like always, you can't taste the avocado. So let's try. Mouthful. Let's try a little bit of cream cheese, which is like blasphemous, I feel like. Tastes good too. Of course, it's cream cheese with honey, so how can it not taste good? You could always use a vegan cream cheese if you want to stay totally vegan with this recipe, but I just used what I had on hand, so. I almost forgot the most important part, because what's a scone without tea? So I must try the tea. And then have the scone. And there's pure deliciousness. So overall, I think pretty good success, especially since I completely changed the recipe basically. So I definitely say try these out. If you don't care about the color or you want to go green, then don't do the buckwheat flour, just use almond flour and you'll see more of the green color. That's why it kind of looks the color it is. If there's any improvements you can think of or something else you want to see, put it in the comments below. I'll see you next time. I've got to eat my food.